Hi everybody, welcome to today's show. This is with myself, Erkan Ali, and my guest Simon Ekin, who is currently in Cape Town in South Africa. Simon was a guest of mine here in the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus recently, and we're here to share what you got from the immersive experience that we were able to provide you with when you came. Si, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ken. I appreciate it.
So, how was it? So okay, let me give you a bit of background. So this is on me. So I've been working with people for probably over 25 years, working on myself since the age of 14, which if you know my age, that's a long time. And I live in North Cyprus, and it's a very special, unique place, mainly because it's unrecognized internationally. It's part of a divided island between the Republic of Cyprus, which you could call the Greek side, and the Turkish side, which is the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. What does that mean, though, being unrecognised? Well, it means we don't have Starbucks, we don't have McDonald's, we don't have Burger King, we don't have, international corporate chains here. It means that our economy is about 4 billion and the Republic of Cyprus is about 16 billion. So we have less money to do roadworks, pavements, lightings. So there's a certain kind of there's a lot about it that it's like traveling back in time, and the lifestyle is a lot more basic, I'd say. Although look, we've got modern hotels, casinos. If you want it, you can find it. But overall, I'd say it's far less developed. Also, what does it mean being unrecognized? Means you can't send post here directly. It goes to something called Mersin 10 before it can come here. Mersin 10 Turkey. If you make a phone call, you're doing +90, which is Turkey. If you're flying here, you can't fly direct. You have to land in Turkey and then get an internal flight. So it does present a whole lot of unique circumstances to being in North Cyprus. And what I want to do is invite clients and guests to come and do residential immersive engagement with me. So we do work with the flip chart and talk about a business or a commitment or some challenge or opportunity that the individual will be working on or working through. But then I'd incorporate into it is nature. So going to the beach, going for walks, going up to the mountains. In fact, one of the clients I had here, we went up to Mount Kantara Castle, which is on the top of a mountain, and we did his vision. We started his vision and mission there, sitting at the foot of an ancient castle overlooking the pointy bit of Cyprus. And on that note, I invited Si over to come and be my guest and share the space and do some work together. And Si's been generous enough to come and join me to share his experience and make some recommendations why it might be a good idea if you're watching this, why you might want to come and join me over here. Si, I mean, what would you add to that? I mean, what was your perception of what an immersive engagement would look like, and having, I know you've been in Cyprus back in the 90s, that was on, in a different era, different time, but your first time essentially in the Turkish Republic in Northern Cyprus, right?
Yeah, that's thanks. That's a great intro for context. I mean, I think that was the biggest takeaway was holy smoke. Like, I didn't know this. The TRNC, the Turkish Republic of North Cyprus. Like, I went to Cyprus. I was in the British Army. I went on exercise there in about 1990, and the rhetoric that I was used to was the Turkish. They invaded, they took the land illegally, much more Greek centric. And also I remember a story of going to Nicosia, and I don't know if it's true or not, but there was on the side of the mountain, written on the Turkish side so that the Greek side could see, was a slogan, this time you walk, next time you swim, right? Now, I don't know if that was true. Where did I get that from? Anyway, but doesn't matter. Symbolically, I think that was really, really interesting. I mean, as you said, Erkan, no major brands, a little bit kind of third worldy, and I mean that in the best sense of the word, because it had a grit and an authenticity to it that I find, for example, in Africa or South Africa, rural parts and so on and so forth, which I really liked. It wasn't particularly, it wasn't Switzerland, right? And I loved,
yeah, very well put.
And I was absolutely astounded at the extent of the division. There's a beautiful program we saw, a video called The Divided Island, and I was really shocked and touched and saddened that there's such division, because, you know, up to the early 1960s, the Turks and the Greeks just got on well, and then there was a separatist movement and, you know, ethnic cleansing, all this stuff. Like, what the hell? I didn't know any of that. Anyway, that's a slight side story. So the point is, I was going to a country I'd actually never heard of. Like, and I say to people, you know, I went on holiday. Where did you go? I said, I went to a country you probably haven't even ever heard of. And they're like, what? And I say, the Turkish Republic. They're like, oh yeah, I've heard of the Turkish Republic. And then I pause and say, of North Cyprus. They're like, what? So it's really interesting. So I think that was the overall context for me. That was like, oh, I'm going to like a new place in a new country. So that was really, thank you for that. And I experienced, overall, for context, stunning beauty, magical hospitality, incredible baklava, which is probably my favorite of all desserts in the world. I mean, it's just insane. And so, yeah, and then staying with Erkan and Julia was amazing. The temperature every single day was 29 degrees. Like, I mean, it was impeccable, and so it was. You know, if you hang around with Erkan, you'll know that there's some surprises are going to happen, because, you know, one of the things I've always really enjoyed about you and your coaching style is you'll kind of go with the flow. Like, you know, I've had conversations with you in the past, and you've been with clients, and you brought them into the conversation. And this is a guy who does, you know, works with real estate, and this is a guy who works with, you know, tweaking, you know, high performance cars. And so I've always experienced you as someone who goes with the flow, and that beautiful balance between the kind of that and that, you know, the masculine, the feminine, the Shanti, the Shakti energy, those beautiful contrasts. So yeah, the food was, I mean, just, I just want to say orgasmic. I mean, just the, you know, the stuff that you produced in the garden. I mean, the tomatoes, the aubergines, I mean, just amazing. And then really hats off to you, man. You've really, you're working the land. And it's very special to witness. So yeah, that was in essence what it was. And then it would be inauthentic for me to say that, you know, on day two. So I'm a passionate naturist. I just love being naked because I feel so good, and having that beautiful sun on my body, and like, wow. And on the second day I woke up, I was like, man, like, I'm not attached to anything, but I gotta ask these guys if I can be naked around the house. And both Erkan and Julia were incredibly gracious, and they said, sure, you know. And once in a while they'd come into the kitchen, they'd be like, oh.
And yeah, by the way, we're not advocating all guests can come and stay naked. It was an experiment for us as well. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's not something I am used to, and it, you know, like I said to you day before, I went to the sea and spent about 4 hours on the beach, just sunning and do some relaxing. And I went into the water, and I took my shorts off, and I just sat there in the water thinking, God, I would have done this really if it wasn't for your influence. So there's something special. I mean, obviously, not obviously, the audience might not be aware that you're the naked speaker, and part of your stage offering is to take your clothes off in front of people, and it's quite, on one level it's very shocking, because we're not used to it. On another level, it's kind of slightly liberating, I'd say. I mean, I'm not there yet personally, but I've experienced it now a number of times with you, and you know what? It's such a, in some levels, it's such a small thing, and yet we're so guarded by clothing, and clothing says a lot about us. You know, it says we're reading information all the time, and clothing, I guess, is one of those sources of information. So I want to go back again. So this divided island, you know, like you go to the Republic of Cyprus, which I'd call the Greek side, and it's part of the EU. It's got tourism, it's got investment, the roads, the infrastructure is, you know, it's like it's probably not as modern as probably Europe, but it's modern for an island, definitely. And then you come here, and it's a very different experience. I think I love the fact that the North Cyprus has that. I don't know, you described it in a really nice way, and I thought I've got to remember that. But it was kind of like third world in the best possible way. There's not abject poverty or people are hungry. There's no shanty towns. We're not like that. But you can see in the infrastructure, and you can see also when you go out into nature a bit, it just becomes beautifully natural. There's that as well. You haven't got people have said for a while, North Cyprus has been a lot of development, and there have been, but there's nothing compared to the south, and nothing compared to the level of infrastructure and commercialization and corporatization that they've got over there. It's kind of great that there isn't a resolution to the north-south divide, because it's kept us in this kind of time capsule of an older time.
I think it's in the days of increasingly AI security, but bluntly a kind of lack of freedom. Places like North Cyprus and South Africa as well, there's a sufficient degree of workability and lawfulness and public services, but sufficient because there's more room, to breathe and to do different things.
But there's some interesting juxtapositions. We've kind of got off point here, but anyway, we'll do it. We've got some of the most advanced AI cameras on the roads. I haven't even seen those in England, and here we are. We've got them in North Cyprus. So surveillance is still important, but pavements and lighting and road lines and markings is not as important. So anyway, look, we digress. Going back to the thing you said about the garden, and something that's kind of become more and more important in my life. When in 2014 I came to North Cyprus, I saw it in winter, and it just blew me away to see Cyprus green, and it is most of the time. It's kind of like a year or two halves here. You got your winter months and autumn, and you got your summer and spring, and it starts as soon as the sun starts coming, it starts yellowing, and the sun and the rain stops. But as soon as the rain starts, it blossoms into green fields, and we've got the trees in the mountains and things like that. So I've become a lot more present to, and a lot more connected to nature and growing things, and that was something that was very important for me, is to give people that experience of. So I go out to the garden and collect some tomatoes, go and get some lettuce, or go and collect some parsley, and there's something about using fresh herbs, fresh off the vine or out of the garden produce that just enhances your eating experience. So and cooking together. So again, that's something we did with people that have come over to stay and work with us, is that they get to cook, they get to be part of the garden. In fact, I had someone over last week, and we planted 4 banana plants, which for me is a first for me, and it's a first for them, and they are now part of the story of this place. In years to come, those banana plants were planted in, I don't know, whatever month we're in, June 26th. So that's that. I don't know what you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're talking about is the kind of lifestyle. I know it's not quite the right word, but the life, the hands-on, the experience of the growing, the weeding. It was beautiful, because I think there's just increasingly little of that in our urban, mostly sanitized life. And I think you've really found your piece of heaven. It's what brought you to Cyprus. So I think that's really valuable. If you're someone who's looking, to do something completely different, then I really would, and you want to develop yourself, then I really would recommend reaching out to Erkan and seeing what can happen. I wanted to touch on the kind of coaching side. So, partly why I went was because, I'd lost my mojo. When I coach, I call myself the mojo coach, and I'd lost the mojo man has lost his mojo, and it was a function of, a year and a half of a very challenging relationship, and so on, just a whole bunch of things, but I'd really lost it. And I returned very different. And so what was that? I think, I mean, Erkan, you've done so much work. I mean, since you were 14, that's not a joke. You really do. You're one of the most knowledgeable and well-researched people, but also one of the most human people that I know. Um, and I really, yeah, I came back resolved, focused, spirited. I got my energy back, um, and I'm really grateful to you for that. I think the access was kind of non-linear. We didn't do classroom sessions and so on and so forth. One of the insights that I had was when we were in the campsite. And just we got some fish from someone. That was a funny thing, wasn't it? We were walking along and these guys were fishing and they had some nice sea bass in a bucket. And we walked on and we didn't have any fishing gear. And I said to Erkan, let's go and ask him for one. And as I said it myself, and this is one of the things that I got from Erkan, like just make requests. It'll be yes or no. And I noticed even as I said it, I was like, oh, I felt uncomfortable. Like he's probably going to say no, and I don't want to impose, and I don't have any money and to give him. And then I just let go of that, and just went back and said, "Hey, man, can we have a fish?" He's like, "Yeah, sure, yeah." And it was quite superb, wasn't it? I mean,
It
it
was.
was.
Like, just to set the scene. This is like one of the widest, longest beaches here in the north, right at the tip of the. It's a turtle. So it's an internationally protected nature reserve as well for turtles. It's got nothing on it, has it? There's no bars. There's no restaurants. It's just an empty beach, very wide, and it's almost like you got it to yourself, haven't you? And we came back with that bass and cooked it. It was just. I got to say, I think it's probably the best fish I've ever eaten in my life.
It was astounding. And you
It
cooked
was.
it really well. You are, by the way, man, you are just fucking, excuse my language, such a great chef. The
Yeah, I
way
mean,
you care for the food, the way you season it and marinate it, and amazing, really
yeah,
amazing.
thank you
I
for
hope.
that. Thank you for that. So there was one standout point for me, in terms of the engagement and coaching was this idea of sovereignty, personal sovereignty. Um, Now you've had a couple of weeks to live with it. How's that showing up? Because like you said, your mojo, you're the mojo guy. You lost your mojo, which is perfect, right? And you reclaimed your mojo. And one of the things that because my coaching isn't just, it isn't formulaic, and I'm not putting anybody down, right? So there's, I mean, the metaphor I might use is like, say you're a musician, but you can play what's on the sheet, and you play it well, and you play it really well, and you know that piece. I'm more of a jazz improviser, like, so I'll chip in and out of different principles, different methodologies, everything from deep research to grounded coaching principles. And in the context of the conversation I was having with Simon, I was like, what I perceived as missing here was you really owning all of it and bringing this concept of sovereignty. Like, you own your mojo. You don't lose your mojo. You're just not engaging your mojo. And I talk about that in terms of one's genius, in terms of the Be Inspired program, is that you open and shut the tap to your genius, to your sovereignty. And it's like a spec, it's not like you're full on or full off. We're different levels, different times of life, different levels of mastery, and we can still produce breakthroughs. So going back with this, first of all, how did it occur to you, this idea of your own personal sovereignty, when we kind of dug in and you got it?
Bulletproof is what comes to my mind. And that sounds a bit motivational, a bit whatever. But what I mean by that is I I'm really in a place and stage of my life because I am what is it that I want to say here? Um, let's just call it the ego is the enemy, for want of a better phrase, right? I mean, we can have lots of depth conversations about the ego. Maybe it's not, maybe it's a frightened child and so on. But the ego just screws things up, so badly, and I acknowledge that for myself, and I'm experiencing myself not as egoless since I got back, but just much less of the ego. What will people think? Will I get it wrong? I'm not sure. All of that stuff, which leads to and compresses sovereignty, complete ownership, and because at the end of the day, people are going to think what they're going to think, they're going to do what they're going to do. There's absolutely no control over what other people do, but complete control over what we do. Remember, you mentioned this Stephen Covey, and the whole kind of, widening the circle of concern, or sorry, widening the circle of influence, narrowing the circle of concern. And most human beings live way too much in the circle of concern, not the circle of influence, which is here. So yeah, it felt like uber responsibility, and I don't mean responsibility like, there's you and I have spoken about this, but I was brought up, be responsible, tidy your room. It's like, fuck, yeah, man. But actually responsibility is it's the source of power, actually. And for me, sovereignty represents powerful responsibility, if that makes sense. So I'm really feeling it.
Yeah, I think it's like a posture. It's like a posture. It's like if you're being sovereign and you're looking at your work, you will filter the world in a very different way. I kind of want to give an example. Do you mind if I do? Like this whole thing about doing the research and the conspiracies, and I've been talking about this stuff for over 30 years, right? And people say to me, "Oh, I had a COVID injection, but I'm not going to have another one." And they think they've woken up, and I go, might not be the litmus test. So, and I give people an example of the litmus test. So I say to them, so when you flew out here, did you go through the scanners? And they go, yeah. I said, well, you're still not there. The scanner is something that I would suggest you stop and go, no, thank you. Please feel free to pat me down. And I do that every time I travel. Now, what happened was on one trip, I've got off the plane at Gatwick and I'm coming back into passport control and they had another scanner. And everyone was just walking through it. And I'm like, well, they scanned everyone getting on. All right, I had a pat down. And now they're scanning people off the plane. Now, in the Be Inspired program, I show a video, and the video is by a guy called John Taylor Gatto. It's about the purpose of schooling. And one of them is what they call fixed response to authority. In other words, you just do what you're told. So I'm aware of this, right? And I walk up to a guy and I said, I'd rather not go through that. And he says, why not? And I said, well, I travel a lot and I want to reduce my radiation and exposure to, electromagnetic frequencies. He asked, where'd you come from? I said, Larnaca. And he said, can I see your passport? I gave it to him. He went, yeah, fine, no worries. Moved the bollard out of the way and I went round. That to me is sovereign. That to me is like, and it doesn't sound like a lot. Most people will go, why don't you just walk through it? What's the point? Well, I'm sovereign and I'm paying attention. So there you go. I will not do something that does not reflect what I think is in my best interests. And I think it's the same when you kind of get, you get upset with someone or you're not performing to the level, or you're resisting some level of your work. How do you turn the tap on in terms of either your genius or I'm using the word genius because it fits really well for me. But inside of that is your sovereignty. Like you are you, and you have every ability to, where possible, because I think there's sometimes in life we don't always have that choice, but wherever you can exercise your preference, your choice, your stand, that's what I would say it is to be sovereign.
So yeah, thank you. Great example, and powerful story, really powerful. By the way, I've taken to very consciously to earthing. We've had conversations as well. We are batteries, filled with all these frequencies and EMF, electromagnetic fields, and so on and so forth. And when I get out of, it's quite cold here, but I get out of bed, I open the sliding window and I get onto the grass, and every time I go, and I put my feet on, I can almost feel this zzz, like this just release into the earth, and so yeah, just as a slight aside, what I want to say is this, and this is kind of almost fresh, in conversation between the two of us in terms of sovereignty. So, my naked piece is the nakedness is the metaphor. It's really around what are all these layers that we are putting on: physical layers, mental layers, psychological layers, psychic layers, that stop us from just being in the world. And for many years now, since about 2011, I've been beating this drum, like loosely called teacher of courage, something like that. And many, many people have said to me, courage, it doesn't really sell. No one's really looking for courage. They're looking for more money. They're looking for more relationships. They're looking, and the sovereignty piece is courage and nakedness, actually. and I'm realizing this as I'm saying it, it's like I'm not for everyone, right? I mean, some people will be like, oh, no, I can't do that. Okay, that's fine. They're not in my tribe for now. That's okay. I would rather have 5 people in my community who really got and leaned into and wanted to explore and were inquisitive about what is this naked thing? What is this courage thing? So and I've spent so much time in my head going, that's what I want to do. And then, nah, it's not going to work. And then going on into all these marketing scenarios. And I've wasted so much time and so many opportunities by not going, this is who I am. This is where I am. And when I do that, I see these clues. Like people will send me messages like, you are the most courageous person I've ever met. Now, I mean, that's great. That's on them. That's fabulous. Thank you. All good. But that's what I need to access because I know that in my own life, never mind my own life, great, but in the difference that I make for others, that's going to go from propelled aircraft to Mach 2 jet.
Isn't that awesome? So, on a final note, I mean, I know I said this is only be like 10-minute, 15-minute interview, but I really
Never
appreciate
is
you.
between the two
Yeah,
of us.
yeah, I really appreciate your generosity, Si, and taking the time. So, as a last word, what would you say to somebody who's watching this and think, I'd like to go and spend some time with Erkan in North Cyprus and eat tomatoes from the garden and work on my challenges and opportunities? What would you say to them?
I'd honestly say just drop them a line. Just say, hey, saw your video. I'm curious. Because that's the kind of, the heart space, the intuitive space, the possibility space, and then watch how quickly this says, don't know, can't really afford it. I don't know what, all of that stuff. Just feel, just pause when you watch this video, feel, your body will tell you, and then just send him a message saying, I'm curious. That's it.
Lovely, beautiful. Okay, so on that note, if you're interested and curious about immersive engagement or any other of my coaching services, please get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to like and subscribe this video. Thanks, Si. Take care.